for the ping pong game, we're going to do this in 3 short videos. And the way we'll work this is the first video, you'll learn how to make the ball move and bounce off the sides. The second video will go into the production and movement of the paddles. And the third video, I believe I have it set up so that it'll be bouncing off the paddles and getting a score. Let's begin. Ping pong is a fairly simple game. It doesn't take much code to actually write the whole game. The idea is you have a paddle on each end of the screen and a ball bouncing around the center. In our case, I'm going to ask you to make 2 balls. So you'll have 2 running around the center, 1 in each direction, starting in different ways. When it hits the side of a screen, it reverses direction and bounces back. And I'll show you how that's done. We use a timer primarily to get the ball to move. Every time the timer goes off, the ball moves a little bit, resets, and starts the timer again. And so we can take care of the speed of the ball, either how often we advance it or how big a jump we make each time we move the ball. It checks for the edges with an if statement, and when it reaches an edge, it simply reverses the direction of the movement in the direction that edge is facing. In other words, the top and bottom will reverse the Y, and the left and right will reverse the X coordinate in that movement. So with that in mind, let's take a look at our screen first of all. We put out a simple frame, properly name them and properly save them. The blue area, or the green area in here, this area right in here, is basically a picture. I call it pick screen, and it's a picture box, and in it I'm going to do the graphic movement. You'll notice right down here I have a timer, and I call the time TMR ball move, just for the sake of giving it a name that explains what it is. Okay, let's go over and start looking at the code to get this thing to move. Basically, we're going to need a few items here that allow us to draw the ball and then to keep track of its location and to move it. So these items right here are fairly standard. You've seen these before. These are the graphic items you need to draw something on a particular object. So we're using the paint method of the pick screen, and we are going to use a pen, and we're going to use a brush. Now the pen draws lines basically and things like that, and we'll be using the pen when we make the paddle. So this is going to be actually for our paddle. We're going to do a solid circle, and a brush is used to draw solid circles, of course. And I've got 1 color variable. Now when you add another object, you will probably need to add at least another color variable, maybe another line width. Again, this is used in the paddles. No, I don't think you'll need another line width. But you might need another paddle if you wanted a different color, if you want the ball a different color to identify it. Now, for the basic ball, we need something to keep track of its X and Y coordinates. That's that. And we need something to keep track of the direction that it's traveling in both the X and the Y for that particular ball. So when you do another ball, you'll need another set of these coordinates. Our basic first setup is going to be down here in the form load, in the Project Ping Pong load, and that's the form load. As we've done in other projects, we set the thing in the middle. So I start this ball in the middle. The other ball you may want to start in another location. And I set its direction as +1 in both directions. Now, the only 2 numbers that are going to be in this is going to be the +1 and the -1. And what that's going to do is when you have a -1, it's going to go the opposite direction. If you have a +1, it's going to go the direction it's first started in. And that's in each of the coordinates. I set the color to white. All right, 255, 255, 255 is my white. And it's up to you. You can pick another color if it stands out nicely on the background, and probably should for the second ball. My line width is 1 at this point, and later when I actually make the paddles, I'll probably up that, because I want thick paddles so you can see them easily. Again, we add the handler to handle the paint routine, and that's a necessity if you ever want to get this thing to work with the paint. I start my timer with an interval of 1. That's 1/1000th of a second I'm doing it. And then I start my timer. So basically those are the things we use to get the thing moving. All right. The timer will go off. What happens? Let's go down and take a look. Let's see, can I get it all on there? Yeah, I can get it all on there. Okay, standard graphics routine you recognize. This is the graphics. I'll just go through this quickly. This makes my brush color, and this basically draws my ellipse, which is my circle that will become my ball. And I've only made it 5 and 5. If you want a ball that's a little bigger so you can see a little easier, make it 7 and 7 or something like that. You do want your ball circular in looks. These other two things are just comment things I'm using to keep track of, so that when I draw my pen I'll know what to put in the pen thing for my lines. Alright, so let's take a look down here and see what's necessary to get a ball to move. As soon as the timer goes off, this method will be run. Timer tick. And I don't know why they called it tick. I think they should have called it ding, because when the timer goes off it rings, right? Anyway, they called it tick. So, timer, ball move, enable gets false. In other words, at this point, right as soon as it goes off, we come in and shut off the timer. Now here is where, in these two statements right here, is where I set the ball in motion. I put it to its next location. And the way that you do that is we simply take the present location of the ball, its X location, and we add to it an increment amount, which I did 3, and a direction. Now remember, I said the direction be either negative or positive. So what this is going to do is it's going to either add 3 to it or subtract 3 from it, right? Because if I multiply the direction times this number is how big of jump it's going to make. So it's going to make 3 pixel jump. But if this is a negative one, it'll make a negative 3 pixel jump. If you add a negative to here, that's like subtracting 3 pixels from this. So it'll jump 3 pixels backwards. So that's the way we control the direction of the ball. We simply have a negative or a positive in the direction here, and the jump size is here. Now I could have done the whole thing in here if I wanted to, but I wanted to lay these out separately so you'd see the direction and the jump amount. And by the way, this could be a variable over here. This thing right here, this 3, could be a variable so that you could have speed up a ball or slow down a ball. That's a possibility, because the bigger jump you take, the faster it's going to go. I've got these set at 1/1000th. That's as fast as this thing will run. If I wanted to slow it down, I could set it at 2/1000ths or even 1/100th, and you see the ball go slower because it would jump less often. Putting a bigger number here speeds it up. Putting a bigger number in the interval slows it down. Those are ways you can adjust the speed of the ball. Now, immediately after I reset the coordinates to their new locations, now I've got to look and check the edges. And that's what these 4 if statements do right here. If the ball is less than 1, notice I don't go clear off the screen. I check to see if it's, well, it would be 0. So I do go off the screen in a sense. I go right up to the edge. And remember, we're talking about the upper left-hand corner of the ball, and that works fine in this situation. So if the ball is less than 1, that means if the X is off the left hand of the side of the screen, that's this side over here, left-hand side, I want to switch the X direction. So all I do is I take whatever's in ball direction and multiply it by a -1. And of course, if it was a positive in there, we now have a negative. If it was a negative, we now have a positive. So that reverses whatever sign was in there. Again, if it's off the right-hand side of the screen, if this is bigger than pick table width, and the ball will maybe seem to go a little off. This is done at very high speed, so it's really difficult to tell it. because it's the upper left-hand corner of the ball, remember, but since the ball is small, you're not going to see too much happening here as far as it disappearing very much. And if it goes off this left side of the screen, again, we reverse direction in the X direction. So if the ball is coming in like this, oh boy, I can't draw a straight line here, can I? Let's try it again. If the ball is coming in like this, hits the screen, only the X will be reversed. So it'll bounce off like this, and that looks like a normal bounce to most people. It looks pretty good. It has a good effect. And likewise with the Y. If it's off the top, this is off the top, we reverse direction of the Y. And if it's off the bottom, we again reverse direction of the Y, because it's going down. Okay, as soon as I've done that, I refresh my screen, which means I erase what's on it and draw the new stuff. And that's where this routine comes in, because when you call refresh, you're basically calling, among other things, this routine right here, which draws your stuff. So it draws our stuff. Then I set my timer and I start again. We're going to be doing something different with this later when we do the scoring to actually stop the ball from running at the end of the game, and I'll show you that. This is a neat method for stopping the game. You could just set that to false and the ball would no longer move and the game's over. And we'll do that in the scoring later. But this is the basis of what you need to get a ball bouncing on the screen. So with that in mind, let's go see what it looks like. Again, I'll have to grab it from off my screen and drag it over here. Hopefully you can see a little white ball there. I'm not so sure how this is going to come out in the video, but with any luck you'll see a little white ball bouncing around the screen. And it turns out that I've made that ball, well, I made my screen just a certain width that comes out to be the same type of path. It actually repeats the path over and over again after it's gone through. It's a complicated path. It goes many passes, but eventually it gets back to its original trajectory and repeats the whole path over again. If you change the size of the screen, the width or the length, you can break it from doing that and make it take a different path every single time. But this is good enough. It looks like a ball running on the screen.